We parked by the curb with a pie on my lap and rain on the windshield, and I already knew the choreography of my parents' quiet family dinner. Swan-folded napkins, the good china pretending royalty might drop by, my mother smiling too wide for an invisible audience, my father fading into the wallpaper, Amanda shining like she'd written the script, and me expected to nod, smile, and be grateful I existed. Travis opened Camila's door and helped her with her scarf. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, worn fur, one ear rubbed thin from years of hugs. The last gift from her mother, gone 2 years, but still sitting with us in the spaces no one else sees. When Camila brings the rabbit, it means storm warnings I can't ignore. We stepped inside to heat and performance. "Oh, she still drags that thing?" Amanda said, rolling her eyes as if the rabbit were a stain on her perfect table. I put the pie down. Camila slid into her chair, small and quiet, the rabbit tucked against her ribs like a seatbelt. My mother drifted in from the kitchen, cheerful voice sharp enough to slice fruit. My father nodded without focus. The talk clinked like glass, small, pretty, empty. Then Mason leaned across the table, 10 years old and primed by adult jokes he didn't understand. "What's that? That ugly bunny? Let me see." He grabbed the rabbit's arm. Camila stood so fast her chair scraped. "Give him back." I said Mason's name once, calm. He smirked. Bolted around the table, rabbit lifted like a trophy. The plates trembled. The vase near the edge shivered. Travis said, "Enough," voice low, but the room was already running. Camila chased, breath breaking, palms open. They met at the corner, 2 hands on one soft body, tugging, gasping, laughing, and crying at the same time. Then Mason clipped the table. The vase fell. The crack of it hitting tile threw a quiet over the house I felt in my teeth. My mother swept in, saw the shards, and her face changed. "My vase! Do you know how much?" She cut off, grabbed the rabbit, and yanked. The seam split. An arm dangled by a thread like something inside me had been pulled loose. Camila screamed, not the sound of a tantrum, the sound of a door slamming on a memory you were trying to keep. "You broke it," she said, and her voice shook. My mother's eyes went flat. "Enough with this junk. Your mom's dead. Time to get over it." Amanda chimed in like a bell. "Are there 8 and still with a baby toy? Pathetic." Camila's mouth opened, but nothing came. She reached. My mother twisted, tore the arm free in a clean rip, balled the rabbit, and tossed it into the trash beside the sideboard like flicking away a napkin. Then she turned back to her precious shards. "Look what you've done to my house." I moved without heat. I lifted the trash lid, took the rabbit out, wiped gravy from his face with my sleeve, and put him in Camila's arms. "We'll fix him," I said, steady enough for both of us. "I promise." I looked at my mother. "You didn't throw away a toy. You tried to throw away a child's right to remember." She waved a hand through the air as if shooing a fly. "It's a rag." My father's mouth opened, then folded. His courage stayed seated. "Don't make a scene," my mother said. "We don't do that in this house." "Right," I answered. "We don't." I zipped Camila's coat while Travis gathered our things. Camila gripped the rabbit's remaining arm like it could keep her on earth. At the door, my mother tried one more rule. Children need reality. I met her eyes. "Here's reality. You will never be near my daughter again." I opened the door. Rain hissed. Behind us, the house smelled like roast and broken flowers. In front of us, the night felt cold and honest, and that was better than warm and false. We stepped into it together. At home, the rain softened to a steady hush against the windows, and we moved through the rooms like people after a fire, quiet and careful, trying not to knock into what still hurt. Travis took our coats, I warmed soup neither of us wanted, and Camila sat at the table with the torn rabbit in her lap, staring at the loose threads like they were a puzzle only love could solve. So I pulled a chair beside her and said, "We will fix him tonight," and she nodded, small and brave, then whispered, "Will he be like before?" And I told her, "No, he'll be stronger," because I needed her to hear that scars can mean survival. We ate a few spoonfuls together, the 3 of us. Then Travis ran a bath, and I set out clean pajamas with the little stars, and after the bath he read from her favorite book until her shoulders dropped and the tightness around her eyes eased, and when she finally lay down, she tucked the rabbit's body under her chin and handed me the loose arm like a piece of the moon she trusted me to return, and I kissed her forehead and said, "When you wake up, he'll be whole," making a promise I was ready to keep with my hands. In the kitchen, I cleared a corner by the lamp, took out the small sewing kit my grandmother once gave me. Funny how kindness skips generations. And set the rabbit on a clean towel like a patient. Then I threaded the needle with the steadiness I use for work when budgets go sideways and people panic. Because tonight I could not shake, not even once. Each stitch felt like a quiet answer to my mother's voice. A simple no that did not need a speech. No to rag, no to get over it, no to breaking a child to keep a table perfect. And I worked slow, closing the seam from the inside so the arm would move but not tear again, leaving a visible ridge on purpose. So Camila would see that broken things can be made safe, not hidden. Travis came in, put tea by my elbow, and asked, "Do you want me to do the last pass?" And I said, "Stay with me," because the room felt strange, like the house had tilted, and I needed the weight of him to keep it level. When I tied the final knot, I tested the arm with 2 gentle tugs and felt it hold, and a strange relief moved through me like warm air in winter, quiet and deep. Then Travis and I slipped into Camila's room and placed the rabbit by her pillow facing her. The seam turned outward like a tiny flag that said, "We lived." Back in the kitchen, I sat at the table and felt another stitch ask to be made. Not in fabric, but in our life. And I opened my laptop and stared at the rows of payments I'd set years ago to keep my parents' theater running. The partial mortgage, the club dues, the salon bundle, Amanda's rolling debts. And I understood in a clean flash that every monthly transfer was a thread tying my family's hands to our throats. So I canceled one, then another, watching the confirmations stack like small doors closing with soft clicks. A part of me shook, an old trained part that fears punishment. But the larger part was calm, the way a storm eye feels when it finally moves on. I wrote a note on a sticky pad: "Protect the child. Protect the peace." And pressed it to the inside of a cabinet where only I would see it and remember. Before bed, Travis took my hand and said, "You did right." And I heard the truth in his voice, steady as a lighthouse. In the dark, I watched the hallway glow from Camila's nightlight and felt the house learn a new rule, simple and quiet. We will not trade a child's heart for a perfect table ever again. On the first morning of the month, my phone lit up at 8:02, right on schedule, and my mother's voice came smooth and sharp. "The transfer didn't come through, you probably forgot." And I said, "I didn't forget. There won't be any more." Then let the silence sit between us until I heard the small angry breath she does when the script goes wrong. She started the sermon: family, duty, sacrifice. But I hung up before the words could wrap around my throat. And 20 minutes later, Amanda called with her rush of noise. "Mason's hockey fee bounced. The gear is due. Fix it." And I said, "No," just that one clean syllable. And she called me heartless. And I told her I had a child to raise too. And she hung up hard enough that my ear rang. The voicemails came like a weather alert after that. My mother listing the things she'd done for me, blessing me and cursing me in the same minute, telling me God was watching. Delete, delete, delete. And then a text from my father, the man who lives like background furniture. "If your mother has a heart attack from this stress, it's on you." And I stared at the words until the threat turned small and almost laughable, like a cardboard knife. By noon, the doorbell rang, and Travis looked at me, and I nodded because I was done hiding. So I opened the door, and there they all were, shoes on my mat like they owned the ground. My mother with her coat collar up like armor, my father with his reasonable face screwed on tight, Amanda with her arms crossed and her mouth set for a fight, and they walked in without waiting, scanning my hallway as if grades might be posted on the walls. And my mother started first. "You don't cut off family." And I said, "I didn't cut off family. I cut off harm." And my father gave a small, weary speech about raising me, investing in me, time and money, and asked what kind of daughter forgets where she comes from. And I asked what kind of parents forget a crying child standing in front of them. And Amanda jumped in, listing hockey, camp, phones, all the things I used to pay for. And I said each one back to her like inventory, then said the last 2 words she hates: "Your responsibility." And something in the room tightened like a belt. My father tried to mediate, told my mother, "Doris, just apologize for the rabbit and we'll move forward." And my mother looked at the carpet and said in a flat voice, "Fine, I didn't mean anything by it. Don't be mad." And I felt how light that sentence was, like a paper boat that sinks the second it touches water. And they all stared at me, waiting for the old me to return, the one who smoothed things and paid the bill for peace. But she wasn't home anymore. I said, this isn't about one toy. This is about every time you made small the person who needed care. And my mother's face turned to stone, and she stepped close enough that I saw my own reflection in her eyes, and she hissed the thing she had been waiting to use. She's not your daughter. One fight with Travis and she's gone, but we're your blood. And the words did not do what she wanted. They didn't split me, they welded me, because right then Travis came from the hall where he'd been keeping Camila busy with a puzzle, and he stood beside me like a doorframe. Calm voice, steady as a post. Camila is our daughter. We protect her. We aren't splitting. And he didn't raise his tone. He just placed the truth down in the room and let it stand. My mother flinched, then went for the prophecy she always keeps in her pocket. You'll come crawling back when life turns on you. And I said, no crawling. Not ever. And I opened the front door and stepped aside. And the cold air reached in like fresh water. And for a second, no one moved. Then Amanda grabbed her purse. My father shook his head like a tired judge, and my mother walked past me without looking at my face. The door closed on their backs and the house breathed out. And in the quiet, I could hear the soft click of Camila fitting two puzzle pieces together down the hall, a sound like a small future locking into place. 2 days later, I learned trouble had changed clothes. Camila came home from school with red eyes and a voice so small I barely heard it. Grandma came to the gate at dismissal. She said, it's my fault you're mad, that I broke the family because I won't let go of junk, and the old cold slid into my bones, but I kept my voice warm and steady. No, sweetheart, adults made the mess, not you. Then I sat her between us on the couch, and we breathed together until her hands stopped shaking. When she fell asleep early with the rabbit under her chin, I opened my laptop and wrote a short, clear email to the principal. Names, dates, what was said, my request that certain people be kept away from my child, and I asked for a meeting the next morning. Then I printed the messages my mother had sent, the ones swinging between love and guilt like a broken door, and slid them into a folder beside Camila's birth certificate and our custody records. At 8:15, I walked into the school office with coffee breath and a spine made of wire, and the principal listened, truly listened, then called the school officer in to note the incident, and I signed the visitor restriction request while my pen shook and then settled. And when I stepped back outside, the air felt cleaner, like the sky had rinsed itself. After drop-off, I drove straight to the courthouse, filled out the restraining order forms with careful block letters, names, relationship, specific acts, the sentence about emotional distress that hurt to write, because it required me to put her small sob into a box of ink. And when the clerk stamped the papers, the sound was thin but final, like a latch, and the judge reviewed and signed temporary protection for Camila with a hearing date in 2 weeks, which meant I finally had something in my hands that wasn't opinion, but law. I texted Travis the update, and he replied, proud of you, meeting you at lunch, and I sat in the car for a minute and let the quiet wrap around me without choking. By afternoon, the phones woke up again. My mother's long text about how they only wanted to teach sharing, how I had grown cold, how they are aging and need help. And I read it once and then didn't answer, because explanations are a net that looks like safety and feels like drowning. My father rang Travis instead, asking him to be reasonable and at least keep paying the club because people know us there. And Travis said, calm as weathered wood, talk to Erica, I support her. And that line held. I booked our beach trip again that night. 3 tickets, not 4, and clicked confirm with a breath that felt like opening a window in a stale room. Camila drew at the table while pasta boiled, a picture of her rabbit standing on a wall with a thick band around his arm. And when I asked about the stripe, she said, it's his brave place. And I kissed her hair and said, mine too, because the seam on that rabbit had become a map for both of us. The next day, my mother sent a screenshot of the country club suspension. Happy now? And the words tried to hook into my ribs but fell, and when Amanda followed with a photo of an empty suitcase and the line, Mason's crying, you satisfied? I turned my phone face down and watched Camila build a lighthouse from blocks, the rabbit at the top with his stitched arm raised like a signal in fog. I met the principal again to drop off the court order, asked the front desk to keep copies, and walked the path to the dismissal gate so I could see where my child would stand and how the sun hit at that hour. Because the mystery I needed to solve wasn't who broke a vase, but how to make a life where no one could casually break a child. That evening, Travis and I packed a small beach bag, sunscreen, a net for tide pools, a paperback we could read aloud, and a zip pouch for the rabbit in case the wind turned harsh. And when Camila fell asleep, we stood in her doorway, and I realized the house had a new sound. A low, steady hum like a ship's engine. Not loud, just sure. The sound of our family moving forward under its own power. 2 weeks later, the calendar met the courthouse, and I walked in holding a folder with tabs like small shields. Messages, the school report, the photo of the rabbit's stitched arm that Camila insisted I bring for proof he's brave. And Travis beside me like a post in the ground. My parents and Amanda were already seated, glossy with anger and effort. And when the clerk called our case, the room felt colder than it should have. The judge read in a flat voice, asked short questions, and the answers came out simple because the facts were simple. A toy torn, a child mocked for grief, a grandmother at a school gate telling an 8-year-old she broke the family. My mother tried to turn it into manners and disrespect and teaching sharing, but the judge cut through her words like he was clearing vines. And when he said, the temporary order is extended for 6 months, school approach prohibited, contact limited to counsel, my mother tried to speak over him, and her voice broke into a noise I had only heard once before, the sound a show makes when the lights finally go out, and my sister started crying without tears, those small gasps that say, "But the bill." And my father stared at the empty middle distance where his courage should have been. I felt no triumph, only a clean, quiet steadiness, like a door had clicked shut in a long hallway I used to sleep in. Outside on the steps, Amanda tried one more time. "Mason's done nothing to you." And I said, "Then be the mother he needs." And I watched the words land and wobble like a bicycle she might learn to ride or throw down again. We drove home through light that looked rinsed, and Camila ran to meet us at the door with a drawing of the ocean, waves like soft mountains and a small rabbit on a tower waving a square flag. And I said, "Pack your sand shoes." And she smiled like a room filling with air. The next morning, the highway unspooled, and the first smell of salt found us before the water did. And when we stepped onto the beach, the wind tugged at our clothes like a playful dog. And Camila put the rabbit under the umbrella, pressed a shell into his stitched hand like a medal, then ran to the surf and jumped the small breakers with Travis while I laid out the towel and let the quiet inside my chest match the horizon. We built a castle with a real moat and a driftwood bridge and a flag made from a straw, and Camila set the rabbit on the tallest turret and said, "He sees danger." And I said, "He sees home." And we ate oranges that tasted like clean light. Later, while Camila drew spirals in the wet sand with a stick, I turned on my phone once and felt the old pull and then didn't open a single message because silence has a shape now and it fits us. At sunset, we stood ankle deep where the cold meets the warm. And I told Camila, "Some people think scars are ugly," and she said, "They just don't know the story." And I felt something release that I'd been holding since childhood, a knot I thought was bone. That night in the rental, with windows open to the ocean's steady hush, Camila fell asleep with sand in her hair and the rabbit tucked under her chin, seam catching the moon. And I wrote 4 lines on the back of our reservation printout. "Protect the child, protect the peace, tell the truth, pay for love, not guilt," and taped it inside my wallet where the autopay card used to live. When we came home, the house felt bigger without the invisible audience, and the quiet was not the old tense kind, but the kind that lets a child sing to herself in another room. If you need it in one line, here it is. They lost my money and my door. I gained a life where my daughter sleeps without checking the hallway first. And when I think of the rabbit, I no longer think of the tear. I think of the seam and everything it holds together.